Greetings, midshippers. Peter Canego here. I'm so happy that you're joining me on this latest video about the ATHOS, a 10-passenger deluxe barge that sails along the Canal du Midi in the south of France. It's an exciting cultural and Epicurean journey that I hope you enjoy. Adjoining the Canal de Garonne, the Canal du Midi is the eastern point of the Canal de Deux Mers, or Canal of the Two Seas, that connects Bordeaux on the Atlantic with the Mediterranean. The 150-mile-long waterway begins in Toulouse and stretches through pastoral farmland, vineyards, and quaint villages en route to Marseille. Constructed between 1666 and 1681, it was one of the great engineering marvels of its time and is one of the oldest active canals in Europe, as well as being a UNESCO World Heritage Site. In the main city square of Béziers, there's a statue of native son Pierre-Paul Huiquet, the architect and engineer who oversaw the construction of the canal. Not only is Béziers his hometown, it's the starting point for our voyage on the ATHOS. Situated on the River Orbe, which is crossed by the Pont Vieux, a magnificent medieval stone arch bridge, Béziers is one of the oldest cities in France. It was founded in 575 BC, and towering over its acropolis is the Cathedral of Saint-Nazaire, which dates to the 13th century. From the ramparts of Saint-Nazaire, there are spectacular views over the Languedoc-Roussillon region of France. We spent a night in this charming city before being picked up in a chauffeured minivan along with 8 fellow guests for a ride to Argelier, where the ATHOS awaited. Beginning in Argelier and ending in Marseille, our voyage would traverse an approximately 40-mile portion of the canal over a period of 6 nights and 7 days. We first laid eyes on the ATHOS tucked away near a stone arch bridge in a bucolic setting adjacent to a golden meadow framed in reeds. As we stretched our legs, her 5-member crew hauled our luggage on board. And soon enough, we followed suit. The ATHOS has 5 cabins on saloon deck. Ours, the Merival, was on the port side and had a twin bed configuration. There are 3 others that can also be set up as twins or doubles. Like the others, the Merival measures 93 square feet and has a fore-to-aft layout. For the same price, the slightly larger 102 square foot Narcisse-Fontrade stateroom has an athwartship layout, so book early if you want that extra space. In addition to 2 small windows that slide open, there's a small closet with a safe and a bathroom with the sink and shower. While compact, this is a barge after all, we found our stateroom to be very well laid out and comfortable. Wait, hello? Almost immediately, staff member Emily had arrived to show us how to operate the air conditioner and to reveal some secret storage spaces we might otherwise have missed.
Just on and off, and then you have temperature.
Oh, terrific. Okay.
And it's
Great.
better to steer clear of all these other buttons.
I will definitely steer clear.
You have some storage.
Oh,
under your
wow,
bed
that's great. Okay.
Here, so once you're done unpacking, if you want to store your suitcases down there.
Excellent. Yeah. Okay.
And here you have a few extra toilet papers and a hairdryer.
Okay. Great.
Voila, and some extra socks.
Oh, excellent. Okay, great.
Voila.
European Waterways provides ATHOS brand soap, shower gel, shampoo, and conditioner. The shower has a handheld head, and there's a very handy outlet with dual USB ports, but definitely bring an American converter if needed. On Sundeck, there's a banquet table that seats 10 under a telescopic awning. There's a whirlpool tub, space for sunning and watching the canal roll by, as well as e-bikes for guests' use. Directly aft of the 5 cabins, a wood-paneled lounge has a pair of comfy sofas, a self-service bar, and a banquet table that can seat up to 12. Picture windows bathe the space in natural light and provide excellent views. Aside from breakfast, most meals are served up on Sundeck, although in windy or inclement weather, they are served here. And in the room's forward enclave, there's a nice selection of French and English books for guests' use. And now for a little bit of background on the ATHOS herself. She was built in 1964 by Atelier et Chantier Naval de Sermez-les-Bains of Marne as a commercial sand, grain, and wine barge. In 1982, she was converted into a hotel barge, measures 98.3 by 16.6 feet, and has a maximum speed of 6 knots. Prior to lunch and dinner, the menu is displayed in the lounge. Each meal is accompanied with beautifully baked breads and fresh creamery butter. One of the 2 hostesses, on this first night it was Emily, starts with a description of the white and red wines that are paired with each meal. Once everyone was settled in and their glasses were filled, our guide Mathieu welcomed us and then briefed us on the next day's itinerary.
It's always easier to listen to me when you have a drink in your hand. That's what we always do. Wine first, then my speech, then the food. You know, that's the way you want to do it. About the, I'm going to take you on tour every day. We're going to use those 2 vans. One of the girls, sometimes PY, is going to come with us. And we're going to go on tour every morning all together. About the tour themselves, I'm not the kind of tour guide who just walk and say, in 1354, in 1356, it's not a school trip. Maybe some of you are teachers, sorry, But I try to make my tour a bit more entertaining, as much as I can, actually.
A delectable beetroot carpaccio was that evening's starter, followed by more wine as we got to know fellow voyagers under a flamboyant sunset. The main course was a saffron risotto with ossobuco, and for those of us who don't eat red meat, a chicken breast alternative, followed by a selection of French cheeses.
And Buonfort means beautiful and strong.
That's sitting on top of it.
And to cap it all off, our first dessert, poached pears, as described by Chef Josh.
Praline, some fresh raspberries, fresh blackberries, a little bit of honey, and some of the reduced cooking liquids from the pears.
The next morning, I made a quick pilgrimage to the espresso machine and breakfast, where the daily spread included hard and soft-boiled eggs and cereal, as well as bread, pastries, cold cuts, cheeses, yogurts, and fresh fruits. We then plied into those minivans for a ride to Carcassonne, regaled by a rainbow that almost doubled itself before vanishing. Carcassonne is a medieval citadel in Languedoc that was built atop Gallo-Roman fortifications. Our rendezvous spot was near the entrance, beneath the unevenly busted Lady Caca, the 16th century Queen of Navarre. Mathieu gave us the guided tour that eventually brought us to the cathedral, which was originally built as a parish church in the 13th century, then elevated to cathedral status in 1803. The stained glass panels depict the life and passion of Christ and other religious themes. We then had time on our own to either shop or take in the glorious views from the castle walls. After our return through more spectacular Languedoc terrain, we were back at the Athos just in time for lunch. This would also be our first opportunity to experience our floating home for the week underway as she began her scenic journey. On the southern flanks of the canal, the original towpath is now a popular bike and hiking trail. A refreshing rosé kicked off our first lunch on board as the scenery literally chased us, and soon we encountered our first bridge for our first telescopic awning experience. Once again, and as he would for the next 5 days, Josh regaled us with a Spanish-infused lunch that included some mouth-watering salads made with delectably fresh from the local marketplace ingredients. One of my favorite parts of the journey was the midday transits of the Midi, with the added bonus of a refreshing breeze to help quell the persistent heat wave that week. As with dinner, after lunch our hostess presented us with a selection of local cheeses, which I enjoyed with an espresso to keep my eyelids from drooping in that relaxing, tranquil scenery. Before long, the Athos had tied up at La Croisade, near another stone arch bridge where we would overnight. Before embarking on the afternoon excursion, my companion Mike and I headed ashore to get more views of the immaculate Athos, which is named for one of the Three Musketeers, who was known for being generous, handsome, and loyal within a steely exterior. Our afternoon excursion took us to the Chateau Castigno winery in the Saint-Chinian region near the Black Mountains. We were given a guided tour and tasting at this fascinating site, which is shaped like a giant wine bottle that towers over the vineyard. It was designed by Belgian architect Lionel Jadot. Elated, exhausted, and perhaps a little inebriated, we returned to La Croisade, which was basking in the golden afternoon light. As it was a bit gusty, we dined inside that night while a bright moon climbed into the sky. On day 3, our first excursion began with an olive and olive oil tasting at Loulibeau.
You don't make olive oil from green olive. That's just water. Inside, you need to wait for the maturation and the yield of oil inside the olive to increase. That's the fresh look, and that's what we're going to start first. And after we're going to go for a second one. It's called, but it's different. It's not as green. It's called the Picholine.
For me, this was a taste of pure ambrosia with a nectar chaser. We continued from there to the Black Mountains for a visit to Minerve, which lies within a gorge formed by the river Cesse. Rated one of les plus beaux villages de France, or one of the most beautiful, it was settled in prehistoric times and then sacked by Catholic crusaders in 1210, who slaughtered its population of Cathar refugees. Nonetheless, it's a place of stunning natural beauty and features an imposing stone arch bridge, which only locals can drive across. It also has a friendly cafe where we enjoyed a frothy cappuccino. When we returned to the Athos, our affable Captain PY greeted us before casting her lines. As our journey's next leg began, our hostess Georgia poured a nice rosé to accompany another Epicurean lunch with duck, sesame tuna, pasta, and salad courses. Meanwhile, Athos meandered through the enchanting waterway much the same as she has done for the past 41 years. Captain Pierre-Yves invited us to the wheelhouse for a quick visit as he navigated us safely along, keeping track of oncoming traffic, steering that huge brass wheel, and controlling the telescopic awning when bridges were encountered, and I'm exhausted just talking about it. The good captain runs a very tight, but not uptight barge.
Try not to much to the right or to the left. Or here we're right to the sharp corner.
All too quickly, we had arrived at the picturesque village of Capistan, where banks were lined with barges and other pleasure craft. Some fellow guests rode bikes to town to visit the cathedral, while we joined guide Mathieu for a short drive to the Oppidum d'Anserune, an archaeological site overlooking the Étang de Montadi, a lagoon that was drained by the Visigoths to create more farmland in an impressive feat of 13th century engineering.
Great light.
Upon our return, Mike and I donned our running gear for an invigorating 5K along the towpath to pay it forward a bit for another indulgent dinner on deck. And of course, the crab cakes were fantastic, but my phyllo veggie alternative was my favorite of the week. After an early breakfast, we filed into the minivans for a 20-minute ride to Narbonne, which is situated on the Canal de la Rabine, directly south. Dating from the 13th century, the Palace of Archevêques, or Archbishops, and the Cathedral of Saint-Just tower over the city square, which was built atop the Via Domitia, a Roman road built around 118 BC to link Italy with Spain. An array of impressive gargoyles guard the cathedral's cloister. While much of the cathedral itself has remained unfinished for centuries. Our next stop was Narbonne's Les Halles marketplace, where Mathieu took us to the legendary Chez Bebel, a restaurant that's been run by the same family for 3 generations. The owner is a former rugby player who cooks up various meats that are thrown down from other family members who run the butcher shop upstairs. That afternoon, Athos continued her eastbound journey in a part of the canal that's built atop a bluff overlooking the vineyards of Hérault. Before long, we encountered yet another engineering marvel, the Tunnel du Malpas, which was excavated by Pierre-Paul Riquet. Remarkably, it took only 8 days to carve the 165-meter or 541-foot-long tunnel out of brittle sandstone in 1679. Once clear of the tunnel, we finally had an opportunity to enjoy the Athos Whirlpool tub before she reached her next pit stop at Fontserrand, which is just outside of Béziers. Fontserrand has an impressive staircase with no less than 7 locks. I watched as a pair of rental boats made their upbound transit, then returned in time for dinner.
Grenache blanc and muscat grape in it.
An impressionistic moonrise capped off yet another magnificent day. On the 5th day, we were off to another early start with a ride to the village of Pézenas, where Mathieu gave a guided tour, then set us free to wander. We toured the local shops, then visited the gateway to the once vast medieval chateau that was demolished in the 17th century. Steps away from the gateway, we visited the Museum of Doors, a fascinating spot with the added bonus of free admission. Back aboard Athos, we immediately began our transit of the Fontserrand locks, which are especially impressive considering that they have been in use for 342 years. Originally 9 locks that connected the Canal du Midi with the River Orbe, its 2 lower locks were sealed off in 1858, when an aqueduct was built to cross over the Orbe instead. On some cruises, barge guests are allowed to go ashore and watch the transit, but that's subject to the whims of the lockmaster, and this one preferred we stay on board. In this part of our journey, the Athos would descend 21.5 meters, or 71 feet, to the aqueduct, which continues from what was originally the 7th chamber. Meanwhile, our wunderkind 22-year-old Master Chef Josh overwhelmed us with a lunch spread that began with some of the best guacamole and pico de gallo I've had in the old world. Next up, the Athos had entered the aqueduct portion of the waterway. A few days prior, we had visited the 790-foot-long bridge, which was opened in 1858 and has been designated a historical monument since 1962. Following that was the Orbe Lock, one of the canal's deepest, at 12 meters or 39 feet. From there, Athos cruised a short but scenic distance to Port-Iragne, where she tied up for the night. Several of my intrepid cohorts rode e-bikes to the nearby beach, where I had just enough time for a 5K run in the Mediterranean surf. We made it back to the Athos just in time for dinner and another Monet moonrise. We slept in the next morning as Athos began the final leg of her journey. In the town of Agde, we passed through the Round Lock, which is where the river Eralt converges with the canal. We transited the far eastern end of the canal, passing the village of Les Anglous and the lighthouse, where the canal converges with Étang de Tau, a large saltwater lagoon known for its oyster and mussel farms. For a very short time, it was almost like being at sea as the Athos navigated the western part of the lagoon. Lunch, including some fresh mussels that were harvested in this very spot, soon followed.
Pâté de campagne, I spoke as well, and this is duck mousse. Yeah.
It truly doesn't get more locally sourced than this. As we finished up lunch, Captain Pierre-Yves and Mathieu brought us into our final port of call, Marseillan. Right behind us and following suit was the 8-passenger barge Anjou, one of Athos's European Waterways fleetmates. Built in 1929, just look at that bow, this lovely vessel cruises the Canal du Midi and along the Rhône. After lunch, we wandered around Marseillan's picturesque waterfront, then returned to pack and enjoy our final dinner, which featured, you guessed it, fresh oysters with our newfound friends. It was hard to believe this wonderful, quirky cruise adventure was nearing its end. As Athos' charming and hard-working crew prepared the barge for her next guests to do our itinerary in reverse, we bid goodbye, climbed back into a minivan, and headed back to where our journey began, Béziers. As ever, thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this unique journey, please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you.